final sessions are about diversity, and how delighted are we as organizers to be bringing this at the forefront. I mentioned it in my opening remarks, talking about Dr. Vibhe Bakshi, who was the producer behind Sunrise. And it's so important that we embrace, and I love the fact that industry leaders now embrace it at the highest levels. So to have Simon Vincent finishing off AHIC today, speaking about diversity, the president of EMEA for Hilton, is a real honor and a real pleasure. But to begin our session today, please welcome back Aradhana Khowala. Thank you so much, Aradhana.
Thank you, Jonathan. Ladies and gentlemen, lower your shoulder restraint, keep your hands and feet in, and if you are on any anti-anxiety medication, now would be a good time to pop that pill. Because over the next 10 odd minutes, I'm going to go on a bit of a rant and bombard you with alarming, astounding facts that will shake you, wake you, provoke you, but more importantly, I hope will open your eyes to the ubiquitous and insidious impact of ignoring women in the travel and tourism sector. Can I just start by saying that all the worst things you ever suspected are all true? For all this discussion we have that the world is now a lot more equal than it used to be, I think there is persistent unfairness in the society everywhere, especially when it comes to women. Discrimination, unpaid labor, violence. Now, one of the biggest myths when it comes to gender diversity in our sector is, well, we don't have a problem, right? Because in my company, we love employing women. We have women affinity groups. We have D&I leaders. We even conduct surveys to ensure the happiness of all our employees. Oh, for God's sake, we even celebrate International Women's Day every March, don't we? How can we have a problem then? But despite a growing awareness about gender diversity, the needle on women in leadership hasn't moved. Now, the good thing is, as you can see, we are one of the most gender diverse sectors in the world. But that also means that we have so many women in the lower rungs of hierarchy that we don't see it as a problem. Or if there is a problem, it's not my problem. So what we did in this instance is to tackle this time-worn topic of gender through the revealing lens of data. The analysis that you see here is 200 plus odd companies across the entire spectrum of travel and tourism. I'm talking hotels, airlines, airports, OTAs, food and beverage companies, cruise liners. All of them publicly listed, and together they employ millions, are worth trillions of dollars, and are operational in 150 countries. Now, as you can see, with every rise in the level, the number of women in the C-suite as chairs is abysmally low in travel and tourism. Now, brace yourself. This, at 5%, is lower than women in technology, women in banking, women in manufacturing, and women in mining. This is the trouble with feminism. You see, we're all jaded. People are a little bored, aren't we? So much so that a lot of good men genuinely believe that women today have the same and equal opportunities as men do. Now, the second myth when it comes to gender diversity is that it's the men who are blocking it. No, they're not. Firstly, I'm not here for male bashing. Secondly, I love men. I mean, that comes across wrong, but what I mean is I think men are instrumental allies in this diversity journey. So I see them as a strength, not as the enemy. And all of you women leaders listening in, we agree already. We're already on the same page. So let's stop talking to each other and start talking to men, because that's how you build consensus. Now, as you can see, this is specific to the hospitality sector. 68 hospitality companies, I'm talking owners, operators, REITs, the data is exactly the same. 5% of women, CEOs, 5% at the chair. Now, I spoke to a lot of CEOs, many of who are friends, most of who are men, good men. They see there is a problem. They want a solution. But the data that you see is proof enough for the fact that sometimes good intentions are just not good enough. Because gender diversity is not suffering from a lack of awareness, right? It's suffering from a lack of results. And that begs the question, why? Because we actually have a very healthy pipeline of women coming up through the ranks. But the number of women who choose to stay in the race falls steeply with every rung of the career ladder they climb. And women are blamed for it. There are endless justifications and excuses. Oh, they have to go away and make babies. There's family commitments. There is probably lack of ambition and drive. And all of this to justify the fact that 95% of CEOs are still male. And that's exactly what manifests in the data here again of the 200 companies in travel and tourism sector, not just for a year or two, over the last 14 years. It's a straight line and it's a flat line. At this point in time, some of my friends here in the room would be thinking or would tell me, oh, but you know, it's all about meritocracy. You have to be in it to win it, and it's quite literally a case of may the best man win. But guess what? I'm all for meritocracy myself. We want to see the right talent on the right role. But here's my question to you. How come the piles of research on the fact that women in leadership is great for business, that when you have more women leaders at the top, there's stronger innovation, more client engagement, better employee satisfaction, how come the business case on that is still not clear? Ladies and gents, what I am saying is if we need a breakthrough, we need to start to measure, to manage. Let's take the case of gender pay gap, right? 82% of companies don't disclose it. And the ones that they do, as you see on the right, where in the UK as an example, where it's a fiduciary requirement, you see that women are not getting paid the same for doing the same job that men are. Again, my point to you is if you're serious about gender diversity, you have to be intentional about it, because gender diversity happens by design, not by default. And by design, I mean you have to be intentional about making it a case of business survival. Hold people accountable. Don't settle for acknowledgement. Toe the line and make sure there are people responsible for promoting women into leadership. Then the playing field will be level. If you look at the orange line, this is the lodging sector. It's exactly the same trend. Now, it's not just me saying it. We saw this with women on boards, right? 10 years ago, there was a lot of scrutiny and pressure from boards to have more women in boards, and that has resulted in an overall improved governance across the world. So we have seen that with boards. Now, I'm not saying that, oh, and this is for independent directors. If you remember, again, 10 years ago, we started with a lot of independent directors, and now the norm is to have a board which is majority independent directors. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying we need quotas. But what I'm saying is, perhaps not all legislation is bad. And given we are in UAE, I can't think of a better example of a country that is actually marrying bold vision with visible commitments. The cabinet in UAE has 9 women. The average age is 38. The youngest minister is 22. This is what I call leading by design. This is what I call leading from the front. Another myth when it comes to gender diversity is, oh, women need to be mentored to get into the C-suite. I don't want to hear that word one more time, because women don't need mentors. Women need sponsors. Women leaders need male leaders who will stick their neck out, hold their hand up, back their candidature for the next role and for the C-suite. Mentors only give good guidance and counsel and gyan, as we call it. Women need sponsors, not mentors. If there are skeptics in the room, you would be thinking, oh, but really, we have come a long way, haven't we? We have made good progress. Absolutely, sure. And that's exactly why it'll only take us 135 years to close the gender gap, and another 267 years to close the economic gap. Now, I'm not just here to rant, because quite frankly, most of the businesses do want to do a better job. The difference between those that they do is that they've actually figured out how to do it. Now, this is my solution. It's a COVID project, and it's one solution. You can have your own, and that's the beauty of it. This is called 5810 because it relates directly to the SDGs 5, SDG 8, and SDG 10, which is all about all kinds of diversity and inclusion. And it is the first digital portal that is measuring all things diversity and inclusion specifically for the travel and tourism sector. It gives the management visibility, allows them to track progress, benchmark against peers, and more importantly, enable early interventions to make corrections. I think it's a classic example of how data and tech can lead a purpose-driven transformation in our sector. Do you remember how all of us came together as an industry to tackle trafficking? It didn't matter if you were an airline, it didn't matter if you're a hotel company, it didn't matter what your brand was. We came together as one industry, one voice. We need the same can't fail mentality to tackle gender crisis. And we need all of you, every single one of you, to become activists, ferocious advocates for the sake not just of your own happiness or the benefit of the organization you serve, but for the sake of every little girl and every woman who you know. Thank you very, very much, ladies and gentlemen. Absolute pleasure.